Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we are going to be taking a first look at S-Class Dylan, who is going to be the main reward character in the Hell Hath No Fury event that is going to be coming up later today. More information on that event once I have it, but we're going to look at the character first, and he is a pretty strange looking guy. I'm not sure who he is. If he's from the comics or something, he could just be like a side character, but he could be an RTS main character as well. We don't know. If anyone does know, do let me know. When it comes to what he's wearing like one of those high-vis jackets, and I don't know, he's pretty low-key, got a hoodie on. He's got Glenn's hat on though. I see that. He's got Glenn's hat on. Well, look at his stats. He's got 4,827 attack, 3,988 defense, 3,567 HP. So obviously leaning a bit more into the attack stats here. Trait is alert and the role is damage. Now the adrenaline rush is called Steady Burst Shot. It is a 76 AP cost rush. It deals 3 attacks of 200% damage, which is 600% total, to one enemy. This character recovers from daze and gets 50% defense for 2 turns. So obviously 3 separate things here. There's damage, a cleanse, and a buff. So the damage is not huge. Overall, it's 600%, which is decent, but it does 3 separate attacks. Now the thing with this is, effectively you could treat this like someone who just goes around finishing characters off. The 200% will do a reasonable amount of damage, but to a single target, 600% is pretty decent. But the bonus is, because it's 3 separate attacks on the rush, this will utilize his weapon specials. So if he has anything offensive on his weapon, which we kind of know he has got something offensive in his weapon, he can have that happen each time he does one of those 3 attacks as well on the rush, so that's good. This character recovers from daze is okay. I guess it depends what his active is. It's just to basically mean that he can do his active. Daze makes it so that you can't do your active. The 50% defense for 2 turns on the end just is to make this rush a little bit more powerful. I have talked about this in the past, where sometimes a rush can be a little bit underwhelming, and if they just tack something like a self buff on the end, be it attack or defense, it would be reasonable, and it makes this rush seem like there's a little bit more going on than there actually is. It's mainly an offensive rush, but a defense buff isn't too bad. It potentially could be used on a defense team because of that. 50% defense buff is quite nice. We'll go across to the active, and it is disarm, crit up, and AP gain. It has an initial cooldown of 2, and it has a cooldown of 3. Number of uses 5. Target enemy gets disarmed for 6 turns, which just basically means their weapon is useless for the raid or the fight. This character gets 40 crit for 3 turns and gains 100% AP. So I'll go to the first bit, and it says target enemy gets disarmed for 6 turns. The 6 turns seems a bit overkill for me in terms of how long that's going to last. I think a lot of debuffs are very long in this game now, especially with S-Class characters. Anything that's 3 turns or more generally means that a character's locked down, especially in a rush. On an active that has a 3-turn cooldown, it's the same sort of deal. When you have characters like Princess, who has a 2-turn cooldown on her active and it lasts for 3 turns, she can lock characters, and basically this means that Dylan will make it a character always be disarmed if he so wishes. So they'll have to have disarm resist if they want to sort of like keep that special. That means a particular stun on defense or impair on defense or something like that will not be able to work. That's basically what Dylan will do with that. This character gets 40 crit, just means he'll hit crit attacks slightly more often. Now the higher someone's crit goes, the less effective the crit amount is. So obviously if he's got 0 crit to start off with, he's obviously got his 10 base, so he'll go to 50 crit with this buff, and it'll be the most effective. If he's already got like 40 crit, 50 crit, because he's got a mod and it goes to like 90, that 40 will be less effective, but it'll be more effective overall. So he might get like maybe a 10% increase with that 40 or a 15% increase with that 40 at that point. Because crit stat has diminishing returns, the first 10's the most powerful, the next 10's going to be a little less powerful than the last 10, and it goes on and on like that. Until the last 10 is like, it's going to be barely 10% as powerful as the very first 10. And defense stat works pretty much the same way. Now he has got a specialist skill, and it is Headhunter, and I do like this specialist skill quite a lot. If this character performs a critical hit on an enemy, the enemy gets crosshairs for 3 turns. Now, because of how his rush works, it's going to be quite similar to how Heng Yen's works, in terms of Heng Yen can do his rush, he can hit crits on his rush, and if that character gets taken out, they are decapped. And it's going to be exactly the same situation with Dylan. If he hits crits on any of those 3 attacks, the characters that get taken out with those crits are decapped because of Headhunter, and it's a big bonus, to be honest. It makes the comeback potential on defense teams much lower, and I just think it's actually a pretty decent specialist skill. Now, where Dylan's kit comes together all round is his weapon is really strong. It's called Dylan's Violent Multi-Shot Revolver. 30% attack is base, a medium bonus to AP when attacking is the upgrade slot, and the special is something that you cannot make, so it's a unique special. Basic attack critical hits deal 100% damage to up to 5 other enemies. That is really strong, obviously, because it can actually go off with that 3-hit attack rush. So potentially he could deal huge amounts of damage to extra characters around. 300% damage extra for those 3 attacks to surrounding enemies. And it isn't even adjacent here, so when I say surrounding, I just mean other enemies. You can attack one person on one side, and it'll hit the people on the other side. It'll work pretty much identically to Rampage, just it's a weaker version of Rampage, but it hits more people. Rampage will do 300% extra damage across the 2 enemies it hits, whereas this will do 400% extra damage across the 4 extra enemies it hits. So it could potentially finish some people off. Downside of Dylan's one, he can't get a double attack weapon, obviously, so he's not going to be able to make this happen multiple times like a Priya could with double attack Rampage. But his rush does hit 3 times. If you stack up enough attack stat, it could be pretty dangerous. Visually, I like the look of his pistol as well. It's got like the multi-barrel on the front. You can see it's got like 3 barrels there. I think that this weapon is obviously great. It is great. Now, because Dylan's going to highly rely on crits, he needs it for his specialist skill as well. What you could do is make a 4 slot on this weapon, and it could be the one where when you hit crits, you slow the enemies. That could be useful. Or you could just go for a heavy stat-based weapon. For instance, upgrade this to 40% attack, go for huge bonus to AP on attack, and for the 4 slot, just add crit, because he's going to need to crit anyway, so you could add crit there and then increase the attack to 50%. And if you put a combat mod of crit on there, he's going to have close to 100 crit. He'll go over 100 critical rating when he does his active. He should be hitting those extra targets on that special quite often. Now, because this character does rely heavily on crit, and he's going to need as much attack stat as possible to make that special work to the best that it can and to get as much damage out of his rush, just the actual single target that he can. I would say you need to get a couple of the team player weapons where they give 15% attack and 35 critical to adjacent characters. If he has one of those or 2 of those next to him, that's when you're going to see Dylan really go to the next level. Obviously, you're going to need to get that attack stat as high as possible. That's the most important thing. He's quite a lot like Arav in that case, where Arav is pure damage and Dylan needs to be kind of pure damage, but unfortunately with Dylan, you also need to build crit to get the best out of him. So it's going to be hard to build him all round as a character, and he's the kind of character that's going to need all your best mods, the highest amount of attack, the highest amount of crit. Now, in terms of the combat mods, when it comes to the set bonus, there's 2 sets you can go with, the crit set or the attack set. The attack set will increase the amount that his 3rd slot special does, the damage there, because it will increase his actual attack. However, the crit set will increase the single target damage that he does with his rush, the actual person who he's focusing, and it's hard to know which one would be better to do. Do you want to get slightly more increased attack, and it won't be that huge amount, but it'll be slightly more attack to the extra damage, or do you want to do a lot more damage to the single target? And that's what you're going to have to sort of like test out and balance. It's going to be hard to know, but it's going to be quite easy to test just because you can swap out your combat mods quite regularly. So all round, I think Dylan is actually a pretty exciting character, and the potential that he can bring to the game, especially considering we've literally just received Erin, who Dylan was going to sit beside really well in an attack team. Basically, Erin is a strong and alert leader. Dylan is that alert damage dealer, and I have actually said that alert don't really have that many like pure damage characters, pretty much Krista and the Gentleman, that's it. Whereas Dylan being a bit more openly accessible potentially during this event, we'll have to wait and see how that's going to pan out, but this looks like a pretty good character. I don't think it's overwhelming in terms of what his rush does. It's pretty straightforward, but his entire kit pretty much just works together really well. I love his adrenaline rush specialist skill and weapon combo. You know, the fact that as much as he relies on crits on one thing, he relies on crits on 2 things. So it just seems more beneficial to invest on critical on this character, whereas in other characters, because they only rely on crits in one particular area, sometimes you can think it's not really worth it. For instance, Dayu, it can be sometimes a negative to invest crit on her because it's better to try and keep her alive as long as possible. But I'm excited for this guy. Do tell me your thoughts on Dylan. He is going to be the character coming up for the Hell Hath No Fury event, and it looks like he's going to be worth grinding for. If this is a grindy event, it is going to be a 3 or 4 week event. That is the end of my video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.